Hello, and welcome to Finding the One Who is Looking. I'm Patrick Kinnaman, and this is intended to be a guide for those of you who are followers of Sam Harris in the Waking Up app or other guides of mindfulness meditation. And if you might be struggling with concepts like looking for the one who is looking or seeking your head or just mindfulness in general, I hope that this provides you a new avenue for understanding those concepts and helps you achieve something new in practice. So we will be talking about who is the one who's looking, where are they, the model of the self, and then a new definition of meditation. So, quick preface and disclaimer. I was an early adopter of Sam Harris's Waking Up app. I read the book when it came out, and that's really what got me in earnest into meditation. I had dabbled a little bit before, but that's really where I dug into it in earnest. And in the past couple of years, I've been able to retain a really potent what I would describe as a non-dual meditative state. It's something that I can retain after about 15 minutes, 20 minutes of practice, and then hold for 30 minutes or an hour if I so choose, depending on how much time I have or my mood or any other number of things, right? But it is a wildly impactful, incredible experience. It's such a rich interaction, engagement with reality, and I've never experienced anything else like it. And my hope is that through this practice, I can help others to achieve something like it so we can talk about it. Quick disclaimer, this is a decomp of my own subjective experience. It's not intended to be objective truth in any way, shape, or form. So it's me diving into these non-dual states and then coming out and recording what I've learned about how I got there and about what happened during the process. And it's part of something I'm developing that is a much broader concept, which I'm calling the sensory hypothesis of meditation, which is just to state that I believe the foundation of meaningful, deep, rich meditation, mindfulness meditation, is in the senses. And that any attempt to bring in spirituality to that as a primary component is only likely to deter from its overall prospect. So I hope you enjoy. So we'll start out with discussing who is the one who is looking. And I think this is really important because it's like, how do you know when you've gotten somewhere if you don't know where you're going in the first place, right? So just putting out terms like look for the one who is looking is really challenging if you're not sure like who this person is or what the context of where it is that you're supposed to be looking. So let's dig into that right now. The first bit of good news is all of these concepts are really essentially talking about the same thing. They're either talking about the process of non-dualism or they're talking about the state of non-dualism. Where's your head, the looker? So all these things you can more or less consider to be synonymous. Okay, so who is the one who's looking? Well, it's you, but it's your own mental model of you, right? So you can see this little green teal outline, mental model. I've got a mental model of who I am. You've got a mental model of who you are. We'll dig into that in a sec. Where is it? It's your own subjective experience. Again, it's your mental model. It's your subjective experience. That's where it exists. But I think it's important to say because a lot of times with the way that these concepts are structured, look for the one who's looking, these get kind of heady, very flowery almost in terms of their descriptions. And so it's like, is this a spiritual thing? Is this a truth about objective reality? Are you trying to tell me I'm in the matrix? Like, where am I looking for this, right? That's really difficult. And it's to say that you and I share a common plane of objective reality. We can talk to each other. And Sam's had some conversations with people who are like, nope, that doesn't exist. But we'll talk about it in that sense that you and I can meet up in a room and talk and you see me and I see a representation or more or less you, right? And that's a reality that exists. What we're saying here is that all the information you receive comes into your consciousness. And within your consciousness, your subjective experience of reality, that is where you're supposed to be looking. And why look at all? Well, this is honestly to observe a hidden truth about your subjective reality, which is that it's not what it appears to be. That's really what it boils down to, right? And that's why you're here, because you know something about it. You know there's something there. You just don't know what it is. So I'm trying to help you find it a little bit more precisely. So let's do a thought experiment to help dig into this a bit. How do you actually see? And I don't mean this like theoretically. I mean this very physically. Like, how do you see with your eyes? Well, obviously, they're lenses. And so by definition, being a lens, they receive light, and then they flip that light upside down when they receive it, just by their natural shape, right? But the funny thing about your eyes, so if you were to see, think about what this means for the context of actually you seeing me and your computer screen and everything in front of you right now. I'm not upside down. Well, I should be. But then it gets even weirder, right? So your optical nerve travels back to your brain, but then your optical nerves swap. So that image that's been flipped then also in a real sense reverses, right? So if you were to be actually seeing things from your eyes perspective, it would be upside down. And if you were to see things as your brain receives it, it would be upside down and backwards. Neither of those two things are the case. So where are you seeing things, right? Think about that. Think about what that means, again, for your subjective experience. Where are you seeing? It's in here, right? It's a recreation of what's out here. It's a very real recreation of what's out there, but it's a recreation of what's out there. Let's beat this dead horse a little bit more. So Hubble is not the one who sees the stars or the distant galaxies. It's designed for that. It has a huge lens that does that receives light, inverts it, right? Collects that data, sends it back down where it's compiled, and then we see the stars and the galaxies. If we were not there to see them, Hubble would still receive their light. It would just not be seen. In the same way, you are not seeing from your lenses. You are seeing from a different seat of or a different location entirely in your head. Again, I know this feels like semantics, but it's really, really not. It's not semantics. And it's an expression of the model of the self. And what does that mean? Well, the model of the self is otherwise known as the self-model theory of subjectivity. And it's just the subject in the subject-object relationship. So I have my own subjective experience of reality where I am me and everything else is the object. I'm the subject, everything's the object, and it's the same for you. You are your own subject in your own reality, and the world and everything that happens to you around you is the object, right? It's very basic. We all know that. But this is something you develop actually over your lifetime. This is not something that just is. You aren't just you all of a sudden, right? That's why we have to develop hand-eye coordination. That's why as a baby, we don't even realize we're separate from our own mothers, right? That's something that we learn over time. We go, oh, these are two different things. And then from there you go, oh, I am my own thing and I have control over all these hands and fingers and weird things. And so you start building this model of yourself. Again, think of yourself, if you are this brain locked in your head, right? And your only access to the outside world are through your senses. It's going to take you a minute to figure out how far I can reach my hand before I touch the hot fire, or how far these legs are able to propel me, and whether I can jump over that ravine there or I'll kill myself trying, right? Like, these are important parts of development in order to help protect yourself and to thrive in nature. Every animal develops this, and we do it through t-ball and playing games. Other animals do it in other ways, right? But over time, you start building a much more robust model of yourself till all of a sudden it feels like this model of myself is me, that I am this model, when in reality, it's just me creating this model version of myself. And it's all really a self-deception when you get down to your own subjective experience. If you really are able to step back far enough and look at things, you'll see that that actually is just a model that you've built over time. And let's be real, it's on an unconscious level. It's not like you're willfully pulling the wool over your eyes. It's very important to have this self-model. We'd be useless and pretty much victims in every sense if we had no model of ourselves. We'd have no capacity to move ourselves around the world. So it's important, but in terms of meditation, the goal is to break that model of the self. Okay, so in that sense, very truly, the one who is looking is your model of yourself. I said it before, but the one who's looking is this model that you have created. And this is important. I know, again, I'm beating this into the ground, but there's a difference between knowing this fact and witnessing this fact, which is why Sam spends so much time focused on trying to get you to see the one who is looking, or see that they're not there at all. It's similar to like you, me, we all know, I shouldn't assume, most of us know that the world is a sphere, is round, and has this thin veneer of atmosphere and is these land masses with no, concrete dividers between countries. We know that's true, but despite that fact, when astronauts go into outer space, they universally just about say it completely changed my perspective on the world. Physically stepping back or moving back that far allowed me to see the reality that I already knew existed, but allowed me to witness it firsthand and therefore changed my entire perspective on the world. That is the point of looking for one who is looking. And what does it come to? What does it look like when you do see this? For me, it was very similar to being engrossed in a movie in a theater, if you can remember what that's like, and you are essentially synonymous with the characters in that movie, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I'm not. I'm in this theater. You don't move, you don't change your position physically in any way, but you suddenly are mentally, you step back far enough to more or less see the forest for the trees in a sense and go, I am not synonymous with what is occurring in this screen. And in fact, that has implications for how I react to what's going on that screen as well. The same is true for your own subjective experience. You can consider this model of yourself as essentially like your first person action game or movie or something. And that if you take the correct stance and you look for the one who is looking in the right way, you can step back from this screen and realize this is simply a model that my brain is creating for myself to help me navigate the outside world. That's all it does, very usefully. And so effectively, we can't always see it. It's very difficult to see the ruse. So what does this do? It leads us, or leads me anyway, to a new definition of meditation. All right, so the SMT, the self-model theory, is constructed of innumerable unconscious associations which the brain applies to all of your sensory inputs. So as a child, that might just be pressure, 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 right? And a sound, a dull thud sound. I feel things as pressure. I don't know what that means. And then I go, oh, somebody tapped me there. Now I've associated that location of sense with my shoulder or my back, right? And then over time, I know, oh, somebody is tapping me there. Somebody is tapping me there in a kind way, right? And not hitting me there. They probably want to tell me about something. So I go from pressure, pressure, thud, thud, which is my pure sensory experience of that moment, to somebody's trying to get my attention behind me. I wonder what they're talking about. That is the level of application or of unconscious association that the brain applies to create this sort of model of the self over time. The goal of meditation, therefore, is to strip those back away till we are back at the place of pressure, pressure, thud, thud. So to see that there's no looking is to see past the associations. It's to strip the myriad internal filters. And with that, we can say, or at least I would say, meditation is truly consciousness engaged with your raw data stream of your senses. From a sight perspective, it's like Sam says, it's the light, it's the color, it's the shadow. It's a tapestry out there without ever even unconsciously realizing that that's a cup and that's a window and this is a computer. Those associations are completely broken. It's akin to, you hear a foreign language and you know there's sounds there with meaning, but you have no clue what that meaning is. But the moment you hear it in your own language, it's impossible not to associate the words with their intended meaning, right? Meditation, mindfulness meditation, is reverting to a state where you no longer are applying those associations. And again, 90% of them or more, I don't know what percent, the majority are going to be unconscious, which is why going about these kinds of activities, I think, is really important to do in ways that strips those unconscious connections, not just the ones you're immediately aware of, like I'm thinking a song in my head right now when I should be meditating. That's only the most superficial component of what's keeping you from reaching these states. And so with that, the looker is really truly the first layer of this process. And it's the important, it's like that watershed moment. If you can get to the place where you go, oh, that was the self-model, and now I can see it's just pure landscape in front of me. then it changes everything about your understanding. Your perspective fundamentally shifts forever at that point. And the rest of these watershed components, these associations that exist across, especially then sound and touch, can come flooding in as well. And you can understand how to release them from the model of the self associations that you have been generating throughout your life. That's it. I hope that's helpful. So, yep, I'll be looking for feedback and appreciate you paying attention for this long. Thank you so much.